Hey everybody, this is Gracie from Pittsburgh Crochet Company. Today we are going to be learning how to make this twisted velvet ear warmer. So we have a long intro today with lots of information about the yarn and the pattern. So just bear with me for a few minutes. I promise it's all really important stuff that you're going to want to know before you get started. So we're using Bernat velvet. This one is in the color Pagoda. The other ones you see here, this one's called Vapor Gray, and this one, I don't remember the name of the pink one. I'll be using the Vapor Gray in the video today whenever we do the tutorial. You're going to need a 5.5mm crochet hook and a yarn needle. You also need a pair of scissors, and if you want a stitch marker to help with counting your rows, you can use that as well. So first what I want to talk about is tension and gauge. So what we're making is a rectangle that is 20 to 22 inches long and 4 inches wide. So the gauge I'm working with is 12 stitches and 10 rows equals a 4-inch square. So 55 rows ends up giving me a headband that is about 22 inches long. This one here you see I measured and it was about 21 inches long. That's perfectly fine. As long as it's in that 20 to 22 inch range, that's okay. So gauge is not absolutely crucial. So the final row count is not set in stone. So depending on your specific tension, you could have more or fewer rows than 55, but still have your 20 to 22 inch long rectangle. So when you're getting close to 55 rows, measure your length and wrap it around your head to double check your sizing. And one more thing before we start. So velvet yarn can be tricky to work with because it's so soft and slippery. It does this thing called worming, where part of the stitch sort of slips out in a big loose loop. So I have one here that I wanted to show you so you can see that one little strand is just sticking out. Now sometimes if it's not too bad, you can just sort of tug on it a little bit and it'll put itself right back down in like that, and see it just kind of disappears. But if you have a lot of those, it's going to be too loose, it's not going to look good, and you're not going to really be able to salvage it like that. So we're going to be doing 3 things to keep this from happening. Number 1 is we went down a full hook size from the recommended 6.5. We are using a 5.5. This is just naturally going to keep your stitches tighter. Number 2 is we're using the half double crochet stitch because it has fewer loops involved than say a double crochet. Another good stitch would be the single crochet, but I chose the half double crochet. I just like the way it looks a little bit more. And the last thing is we need to make sure to crochet tight. We don't want anything loose or drapey. We want every stitch to be very tight. So take your time with this, keep everything nice and tight. Okay, so we are finally ready to get started. So grab your yarn, and first up we are going to make a slip knot. Go ahead and stick your hook in there, and we are going to chain 13. So I'll go ahead and do that here. Okay, so we have completed the 13 chains that we needed. So now we're going to half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. So it's going to be that we count as 0. The one on the hook does not count. So next, that's the first chain from the hook, and there's the second. Now velvet yarn is tough. It's hard to see your stitches. So just make sure that you're going into the second chain from the hook with a half double crochet. And just remember, you just want to make sure that everything is nice and tight, no loose stitches here. So now we're going to continue to half double crochet putting one stitch in each chain the whole way down those chains, and we're going to have a total of 12 half double crochet stitches when we're done. And you could kind of see there my chain was trying to twist a little bit. Make sure nothing is getting twisted. Make sure you're going into the right stitch. It's tough to see. And just make sure you're keeping everything nice and tight. So 1 half double crochet in each chain the whole way down, and then whenever you're done with that, I'll show you how to turn, and then we'll start the second row. Okay, so we have finished our 12 half double crochets. This is what it's going to look like. And now we're going to chain 1 and turn to start row 2. So you just chain 1 right there, and then go ahead and turn. And now we're going to be doing the same thing for every single row. So every row will be just like this one. So go ahead and half double crochet in the second stitch from the hook. And then you're just going to continue to half double crochet in every single stitch the whole way down until you get to the end. And once again, we are making a total of 12 half double crochets per row, remembering to keep them very tight, remembering to be sure that we're going into the right stitch every time. Just 12 half double crochets the whole way down the row, then we'll chain 1 and turn and just do the same thing again. And I just want to point out the last stitch of every row, the stitch that you're working into, since it's on the end, it's just going to look a little bit different from all of the other stitches in the row. So it'll just sort of be hanging out on the end like that. Sometimes it tries to hide a little bit. So just take an extra second to check out where you're putting your hook and where you're placing your stitch to make sure you're in the right area. So now to begin row 3, once again we are going to chain 1 and turn, and then make 12 half double crochets the whole way down the row. So I just wanted to give you a little close-up of the stitch here. So if you're having trouble seeing where you need to be placing your hook, hopefully this zoomed in version will help a little bit. So while I'm doing this, I want to mention the gauge again. So we're going to be doing about 55 rows. I want to stress the about 55 rows because if your gauge isn't exactly like mine, then you're not going to be doing exactly 55 rows. You'll probably be somewhere pretty close, like somewhere like 50 to 60 rows. You'll probably be close to that 55, but if you do like 57, that's no problem. So you just want it to be a 20 to 22 inch long rectangle. I do tend to stick a little closer to the 20 side of that, the 20 inch long rectangle, because it will stretch out over time. Not too much, like it's not going to be totally unusable from stretching out, but it will stretch out a little bit. So I like to start with it maybe just the teeny tiniest bit too tight, because then after you wear it a few times, it'll start to get really comfortable from stretching out to fit your exact head shape and size. So don't worry about making sure you have exactly 55 rows. Just 20 to 22 inch long rectangle is all we're really going for here. So keep a tape measure handy. And also when you're getting close to the 55 rows, like maybe once you start hitting like 45 rows or so, just take your headband, wrap it around your head, and see how close you are to going the whole way around your head. You want the two ends to be just touching with a teeny tiny little bit, maybe like a 1/4 inch of overlap in the front. Okay, so now that we have completed our 55-ish rows, we are going to be sewing in the twist using our yarn needle. So just go ahead and thread that. And then you're going to pick up each end and fold it just like that. Grab the other end, and you're going to fold that in the same way. And now we're just going to interlock those ends just like that. So get them as even as you can. Go ahead and hold them tight. And then I like to reach in and pull up, those ones inside just to make sure that everything is nice and flush on top. Then grab your yarn needle, and you're just going to sew back and forth, making sure you're going through every piece every time. You want to make sure that every single little piece, like we have 4, pieces there from folding it, make sure you're going through all 4 of those. And then you're just going to go back and forth. So you're just going to sew back and forth like this, going all the way to the opposite end from where you started. Then once you get to that end, then you're just going to reverse and go back the direction that you just came from. And then I like to go all the way back to the end where I started, and then I go back into the middle, and then that's where I fasten off. And whenever you're sewing, you just want to make sure you're going through just that top row of stitches. You don't want to be going any deeper down into the headband. Okay, so now that we've reached the middle here, we're just going to go ahead and fasten off. So I like to just tie a knot here, pull it a little bit tight. Don't cinch it as hard as you can, but make sure it's nice and snug. And then I'll do a double or a triple knot here. Now once I'm certain that everything is secure, you're just going to take your scissors and cut right above that knot. If you wanted to weave in that end a little bit, you could. I never do, and I've never had an issue with anything unraveling, and I've been making these for years, so I just cut it. So next thing you're going to do is take the string from the other end and do the exact same thing. So now all that's left to do is turn it right side out, and you've just made yourself a beautiful headband. So thank you everybody for following along today. I do have available in my Etsy shop a complete kit for this pattern. It comes with all of the supplies that you need, plus the written pattern as well. That's sometimes nice to have to look at as a reference. And I also have just the digital download of the pattern if you already have supplies and you just want a written pattern. So thanks everybody. See you next time.